Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. The other people can catch up with us. I have to teach a 4-hour broker CE class at 1 o'clock today, so we're going to get on through this stuff. I'll answer any questions you have, but if we may finish a few minutes early, give me a chance to voice to recover to start up with the brokers for the board at 1. So we're going to discuss paragraph 2A, backup contract. And once again, we read straight through them in this session. So let's go through it and then discuss it. This contract is first back up to another contract dated, whatever the date of the other contract would be, between that seller and buyer. This contract becomes the primary contract immediately upon notice from seller that the other contract is void. So let's stop and discuss that sentence here for a second. A notice, remember, a notice is a unilateral communication in writing from one party to the other. So the seller would send over a written notice and stating that the other contract is void. At that point, your contract would become primary. It does not require an addendum. It does not require your purchaser, if you're representing the buyer, to sign anything. Once you get that notice, your contract is in full force in effect. Okay. All deadlines contained in this contract shall be measured from date of ratification or the date of this contract becomes primary. Now, unless your buyer, if you're representing the buyer, is willing to go ahead and make loan application, if they were getting home inspections, if they want to pay for that and take the chance the other contract doesn't go through, then you can't use date of ratification. You would use date that this contract becomes primary, which would be the day that you receive the written notice from the other party that the contract, their previous contract, is void and you are in primary position now.
A question there.
Okay.
Why not date of ratification? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, if you chose date of ratification, okay, and you're going to measure the time from date of ratification, the first contract is the primary. We probably won't even know whether it kicks out, and it would kick out for what reasons. Well, maybe they had a home inspection. So if it was a home inspection and they had 10 days, well, let's do the math here. That would be 10 days to get the report over there, or they probably had 7 days to negotiate, so that's 17. If they couldn't reach an agreement in the negotiating period, then the buyer has 3 days to void the contract after that. So we're 20 days into this. So if you chose date of ratification and you had a 30-day settlement, can your buyer get everything done in 10 days?
No,
probably not. Yeah. So you want to use the date your contract becomes primary, and that resets the clock and everything starts from then, and your buyer is not putting any money out. Now, if you're representing the seller, which one would you probably want? Probably want date of ratification, sure. So it's a matter of a negotiation here, right? But if I'm representing the buyer, unless it's a cash transaction, we probably could not use from date of ratification, okay? Let's look at this next paragraph. Additionally, settlement date will be X number of days after date the contract becomes primary. So if they make it 30 days after the date the contract becomes primary, then if your buyer used date of ratification, they're just gambling that the other contract will kick out. Otherwise, the money for their inspections and their appraisals and that type of stuff would have been wasted. So it's a gamble. Just discuss it with them either way. But even if it's the date of the contract becomes primary, we're probably going to need at least 30 to 45 days to get to the settlement table. So if I'm the buyer, I'm using date the contract becomes primary. Okay. A buyer may void this backup contract at any time by delivering notice to seller prior to delivery of notice from seller that this contract has become the primary contract. So I'm often asked, why would my party want to be in a backup position? Well, let's think about this, okay? If the market's tight and there's, they've already written 7 contracts, then what harm would it be to be in a backup position? They can continue to go out and try to find another property. If they do, and it gets ratified, then you need to immediately send a notice in writing to the seller of this current property that you are voiding that contract so that they do not be stuck with 2 properties. And that really became a problem when we were dealing with short sales where the bank had to, approve the contract as a contingency. We had people having their contract out there and they never bothered to remove the void the prior contract, and people were ending up with 2 properties. So we'll further discuss how I would use this paragraph in a second.
Hey, Larry, and just a quick question again.
Okay.
Would you use would you use rescind the contract? If you were the first backup, you got another property, would the notice be to rescind it or just?
You need to, if you're in the backup position here on this house, okay,
Yes.
the original contract, and your buyer does find another house,
Yes.
then all you have to do is send a notice, something in writing, okay, to the other side. And it says deliver notice, so that's capital D. So I'd make sure I send it where it said in paragraph 6 of the contract, just saying we're sending notice that we are voiding our contract as a backup. So now
So you would use the
no
language
longer
as voiding?
exists. Yeah,
So
that way
you use the language as voiding instead of rescinding it, or just?
Yeah,
Okay.
void it, okay, because that's what the contract calls for, a notice to void, okay?
Okay, thanks.
So,
thank you.
okay. If the other contract settles, then of course this contract automatically becomes void because the property's been transferred, right? I don't think we need the explanation for that one. The rights and obligations of the parties under the primary contract are superior to the rights and obligations of the parties to this backup contract. And that's why, another reason why you might not want to use the data ratification, because your party's done all these inspections and everything and paid for them, and they have no rights to go back against anybody for anything because they were not the primary. Does that make sense?
Larry,
Yeah.
Larry, I have a question.
Okay.
If you have backup contract, honest money deposit will be in agent's hands, or it should be deposited?
Well, that is a good question. I would write something into my contract that the earnest money deposit would be deposited into the escrow account within 24 hours after our notice that we are now primary.
Okay.
And here's the reason. And that's why you say all the terms of this contract are from the date of this contract becomes primary. And here's the reason. If I give you a check for $10,000 and that's all the money I have, okay, and we did not adjust the date to start when we become primary, then how many days before that check has to be in the bank?
I guess 3 days.
Well, 5 business banking days, right? But you have to have it into our firm within 3 days, according to our policy, so it can be presented. So if everything's measured from the date of ratification, then that $10,000 check has to be in the bank within 5 business banking days. The problem is, unless I have more money to give you for the next property that I am going to write a contract on, then I can't use that $10,000 you already have in your escrow account, because real estate board rules and regulations under prohibited acts says that a purchaser cannot use the same check for more than one property or for more than one offer. Okay, so it's already tied up to this property, and even though you voided your contract because you bought another property, okay, the seller would still have to sign a release of the contract and earnest money deposit for it to come out of your account. But if it was all based on the deposit isn't made until we become primary, then they didn't have to give you the check and deposit it. So that was an excellent question. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why would you want to use this backup contract? Well, let's take it from a seller's point of view. Okay.
Quick question.
Okay.
What page are we on so that I'm tracking with you, please?
I'm on page 26 in my package. It says clauses, backup contract. It's under the contingencies and clauses.
Okay.
Did you find me?
Yes.
I believe your package, did your package have the same numbers as mine, or did you have the
26.
package? Okay, yeah,
Yes.
page 26.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so why would I use this as a seller? Well, if I have more than one contract on my listing, okay, on my home, how many can I accept? Say I have 4 offers on my home. How many can I accept?
1.
One.
Why? Why only 1?
Only have one house to sell.
Well, why couldn't I accept 1 and then counter the other contracts to be a backup offer to the primary at the same terms and conditions as the one that won?
You can do that.
So I can accept more than 1 offer, right? So when that first offer comes in and starts asking for a bunch of stuff to be done, you already have a backup offer to take its place. You put your seller in a stronger negotiating position. But so what I want to make sure you do understand, if your owner doesn't counter back as a backup, then any contract that's not accepted, remember to write on there, reject it, the date on the first page at least, and have the owner initial it, okay? And as a buyer's agent, if you had a contract on an offer and they call and say, well, we accepted another offer, does that mean your offer now no longer exists, or is it still out there?
Still out there.
It's still out there. So if, as a matter of practice, if they haven't sent back something that says rejected, and your buyer doesn't want to be in a backup position, withdraw your offer, void it, okay? Don't leave it floating around out there, because technically, if that first contract died and your other one was still out there, wouldn't it be a shock to get something from the listing agent saying, okay, remember that offer? So, we've accepted it. Now you're in, get the idea. Now, why would a buyer want to be in a backup position? Well, if the market's tight, what's the worst case situation? If there's not many properties out there, what's the worst case situation? Well, you're in a backup position. If it settles, you don't get this house. You can still go out and look at other houses, and if you find one, send a notice over voiding this contract. So if I'm representing a buyer and they call back and say, well, we accepted another offer, see if they're willing, and if they're willing to accept an offer similar to that or equal to the one they have, and put your buyer in a backup contract position using this clause. What's the worst case situation? Something happens to that first offer, then your buyer has a house and the negotiation is already over and they don't have to start over again. So I can see reasons for using this, even if it's not already part of the contract. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Got a question.
Okay.
So, Larry, if you are the listing agent and you receive multiple offers, now I typically know if we accept one, we ratify one offer. I do typically send out an email to the other offerers, notifying them that we've accepted another offer at this time. So are you saying that in addition to that, I probably should send something back that says we rejected their offer?
Absolutely, because just because you accepted another offer, did you say yours no longer exists?
No, I haven't stated that. Right.
Okay, and so DPOR regs, require, that actually require that they be rejected. Now, I know most agents never do it,
Right.
and that's why we're becoming known as the best agents out on the street, because we are following the regulations. Now, they're going to think you're crazy, and they're going to say, well, no one ever does this, and we should just say that, well, it's the policy of our firm. That we follow the statute in the state of Virginia, or whatever you want to do. But reject those offers. Don't leave them floating around out there. And as a buyer agent, you don't want yours floating around out there and the seller try to come back later and say, well, we never rejected it. Okay. So just precautionary, right?
Larry, may I interject another observation?
Sure.
And then can you let me know if this is correct or erroneous? Early in my career, a legal counsel suggested that when you send that email out saying that you accepted another offer, that email was a legal notice just as equal as a notice that you would put on paper saying that the offer has been rejected.
Well,
what's your insight to that?
My insight is in Massachusetts, it's been ruled that it is. In Virginia, it has not been ruled that it is. So until I get a ruling from our Supreme Court saying that an email is equal to can create a contractual term or end it, I'm still sending it as a notice in writing rejected on my contracts. Okay.
Understood.
Okay. Actually, if you would go to the VAR website, Virginia Association of Realtors website, and sign in, they have a good legal hotline, and there's a podcast on there discussing that exact point. Okay, so I don't take a chance. I just write rejected on the first page, attach that to your email and send it back, and thank them for their efforts. Okay, or discuss with your seller. Would you like to put one of these in a backup position? What's the worst situation for them, right? Not saying the other side will want to escalate to wherever the winning bid is, but at least give some options to your buyers to let them know that you're coming up with everything you can in a tight market to try to help get them a property. Okay, so that's backup contract position. Next one we've discussed in the past, but let's take a look at it. As is property condition. Remember, even though you write into your contract other terms, the property comes as is. Paragraph 10 says, except for otherwise contained herein, there's certain things that might not be removed by saying as is. So always, if you're writing an as is contract for a buyer, always remember to include paragraph 2B. If you're going to truly be as is, check each one of these boxes, okay? And initial the crosshairs. If you only want to pull some of them out, same way. If you're the listing broker and the seller said as is only, even if a contract comes in that says they're taking the property as is, I would talk to my seller about countering back and including paragraph 2B. That way, you covered your bases. So paragraph 10 says the property will be free and clear of trash and debris and broom clean. You remove that. So if you're dealing with a property that is a short sale or the owner just defaulted or whatever, all that stuff in that house, you don't want to have to move. You're dealing with an old person that was a hoarder. And we had one of these where not that big of a house, but it was like 2.5 big containers of trash that went out there. I'm talking the 30-yard containers, not the little small things. So, and it So you can say as is, and you take care of getting everything out of here. Or buyer assumes responsibility for smoke detectors. That's paragraph 16 of your contract, okay? All clauses pertaining to termites and wood destroying insects are deleted. Unless it's a cash deal, the lender's probably going to require that, right?
That's paragraph 18, yep.
Paragraph 18, yes. All clauses pertaining to the seller's compliance with all orders and notices of violation of any county or local authority are deleted. Paragraph 20 of our contract. You know that we can't override statute by agreement, but we can pull out things that that are orders and notices of violations in paragraph 20. I do want you to go to paragraph 20 of the sales contract.
Yes, that's the title. That's title, right? Paragraph
No.
20 is title, right?
Well, it also covers other stuff. So yeah, it's paragraph 20 title. So let's take a look at paragraph 20 for a second, what they're talking about here. If you go down to, in paragraph 20, if you go down to the last paragraph on that page, okay, halfway through it, it says, unless otherwise agreed to in writing. Do you see that? It's on page 7 of your contracts package.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, seller will pay any special assessments and will comply with all orders or notices of violations of any county or local authority, condominium unit owners association, homeowners or property owners association, or actions in any court on account thereof against or affecting the property on settlement date. So if you write a contract as is, without taking these conditions out of the contract, you may still find that your seller is responsible for certain things. Now, remember, we discussed this paragraph many weeks ago. This paragraph used to read, will comply with all requirements, comma, orders or notices of violations. They removed the word requirements because the statute only requires a seller to disclose if they receive something in writing that they're in violation of statewide building safety code or local zoning. So the example we always use, they finished the basement without a permit, okay? Whose responsibility is that if they buy that property and then the county discovers, your buyer buys the property, the county then discovers this finished basement without permits? Whose problem is it going to be after settlement?
Your buyer's problem.
It's the new buyer's problem because there was nothing in writing, right?
Correct.
So if your buyer knows, I mean, your seller knows they finished these things without permits, I'm probably making sure, okay, that they're using the as-is property, the as-is contingency, and at least removing that one. You don't have to remove them all in paragraph 2B. You know, there's just certain ones that you may want to remove, okay? And it also talks back here on paragraph 2B.
Hold on, Larry. If
Yeah.
the seller finished the basement without permit, I mean the seller who sold the house responsible for the permit, because
No.
buyer didn't know,
Buyer's problem.
Buyer's problem. Okay, how the
Okay,
agent
because
Caveat
our statute says the seller only has to tell them if they have received a what?
Notice.
A written notice of a violation. Now, if the seller received a written notice of violation, there's a one-page disclosure form they must use in the state of Virginia. But remember, there's only the 5 things that a seller must tell in Virginia. So if you check the tax records, and it shows in the tax records, it shows this house has an unfinished basement, but you're standing in a full finished basement. You know the owner probably didn't get permits, right? So in Fairfax County, for instance, all your buyer has to do is Google FIDO, F-I-D-O, Fairfax Inspection Database Operations. You can type in the property address at that website. It will tell you if there's ever been any permits pulled to do any work in that house and if it's been finalized. If not, then my buyer should be writing a clause in their contract that this contract is contingent upon the seller providing us the permits, all right, in the finals.
You said FIDO?
FIDO, like the poodle, FIDO.
And
Okay.
what does that stand for?
Fairfax Inspection Database Operations.
Now, is this all
That's
Northern Virginia or?
That's Fairfax County. Each
Okay.
county has their own. So you can go to each county's website. You just have to figure out where it is on the site and put in the property address. Now, I think Fairfax, the default is 5 years, but you can change it to go back longer in time.
Can you repeat that, Larry? What are the letters? FIO?
FIDO, FIDO.
How about
FIDO like a dog. Okay.
how about
Okay.
Loudon? What kind of
They have the same information, but I
Okay.
don't know the site. Maybe it's called Lido. I don't know.
okay.
Which would be
Yeah, could be.
which would be appropriate because the seller's been what?
Could be. Larry, if the seller didn't get the permit for modifications, why title company didn't pick it up?
Why didn't what?
Why title company didn't find it and didn't notify the buyer about this issue?
Does the listing company have to look for any problems?
No, buyer's agency,
Yeah, well,
from buyer's side.
The buyer, so when I sit down with my buyer in our initial consultation, I go over all this stuff, why they should hire me and pay me the money I charge to have good representation. Because I'm going to tell you, you should go to FIDO and check this out. I'm going to tell you, you should, if you're going to buy a car, a used car, okay, what do they recommend for buying a used car? What kind of report?
Carfax.
Carfax.
Yeah,
Like,
Carfax.
isn't it amazing? You'll go out and buy a $15,000 automobile and pay money for a Carfax to protect you, to make sure you're not getting a lemon. But we can't even get people to want to do a home inspection and pay for it. Okay, so there's something out there called Landfax, LANDFAX. Okay. And you can pay, and it's about $500 probably as a buyer, but it will do it. Their computers go out and they find everything about that property, everything that's ever been out there. But how many people will spend an extra $500 to protect $1 million investment? Okay,
Zero.
they don't even want to pay us. They want us to give them money to use us. Okay, so I set it up for the people. How many people ask for a clue report before they write their contract? How many buyers? Okay, so what's a clue report? CLUE, Comprehensive Loss Underwriters Exchange. Okay, the owner of a property can pull a clue report once a year on their property, and it will show anything that's been registered against their property as a claim, right? And it stays on there for 5 years. Now, as a purchaser, I'm probably going to ask the owner to provide us a clue report on their property and give me 3 days to review it and to be able to void the contract if I don't like it. And the reason being, the claims that seller made to their insurance company will determine what my interest rate as the buyer is going to be. Okay. Not only that, but my FIDO score. Or FICO score, I'm sorry, okay? That all figures in. So clue report is part of the Fair Credit Act. So you're entitled to one free clue report per year as part of your credit report, okay? So, I mean, there's different things that I can sit down with my buyer client and go over that they should do. That doesn't mean they'll do it. And in a market where they're fighting over houses, if we ask for a home inspection, we ask for a clue report, all this other stuff, your contract's probably not going to go through right now. Okay. Yeah. So that's why they have that adverse consequences form. that NVAR came out with. It says, you know, my agent told me I should do this, but it was my choice not to. Okay, so if you search online, okay, at Fido, and you see this basement was finished without permits, then but your seller really wants the house, and they said, I'll take it anyway. Well, then get the adverse consequences form signed, because I guarantee you, when they go to sell it in the future, we might not be in a market like this. The next person might not be so nice, right? So, you know, we can only do certain things, you know, and advise them, but it's up to them if they want to move forward. I've seen probably, I had at least a half a dozen calls where the loans weren't approved by the deadline, and now there are people who are in default, and they want to know what we can do. There's nothing. You put them in that position, okay? And part of what's happening, if lenders might not want to make the loan anymore, just simply not make the loan, okay? And they have the power to turn it down. So be careful. Get all your ducks in a row. If the lender finds out about some of these things, so they may decide the property is not meeting their guidelines. So back to paragraph 2B. You got me rambling there. Back to paragraph 2B. The last one, all requirements for the seller to comply with POA or condo owners notices of violations related to the physical condition of the property are deleted. So if I'm selling my property and I'm in financial straits, and there's some things that the condo association wanted done, I don't have the money to do them. I might be countering back saying, look, yeah, I've got these things, but I don't have the money to fix it. If your buyer wants this house, they fix it. Okay. So there's other reasons that you might use this. And we have a lot of people overpaying for houses, right? And if they lose their job and they have to go to sell it now in a short period of time, it may not appreciate it enough to even cover the cost of sale. So it's pretty easy to figure out. If you take how much they owe on the house, and you take your commission plus closing cost and subtract that from 100% and divide that number into how much they owe, that's what they call the break-even point. And if they can't break even and they don't have any money, how are they going to fix any of this stuff? So you might have to go back here and say, you know what, we found these problems, and I understand that, but this seller has no more money. The only way this is going to work is for them to agree to these as-is conditions. So for that factor again, say the commission is 6%. That's our commission per our policies and procedures manual. In Northern Virginia, the seller's closing costs are going to run about 2.25. So that's 8.25. If you subtract that from 100%, whatever that factor is, you divide that into how much they owe on the house, and that is called break even, not bring any money to the table. Okay? So if they don't have the money to bring to the table, then we've got to do some negotiating to make this happen. So you can pull these clauses out. So if they find this stuff, or this happens, the buyer's saying, I'll take care of it.
I have another comment regarding permits to make, Larry.
Okay.
I have found that sometimes, although permits may have been pulled, it may not have been finalized.
Right.
So you may have an issue there as well.
Yeah. Another situation also, look and see what work was done and how long ago. We had one where the young couple, you know, they had an attitude when they came in, but after I finished with them, they were okay. They were referred to me by my daughter. You know, they engineer type and knew everything. But once I explained Fido to him, he did do the Fido, found out that the distribution boxes had been replaced 10 years ago in the septic system in a house in Fairfax Station. And he called and talked to the county, and the county said, yes, they were replaced 10 years ago, but these plastic boxes are only good for about 10 years. And sure enough, when they did the inspection, it showed that the boxes were cracked, and we had them replaced with, negotiated to have them replaced with the concrete boxes. But we would have never known if we hadn't checked FIDO, because it might not have even done the complete uncover the tanks and check them out. We had the right to do it, but they were trying to save dollars. But ended up, it would have cost them probably $8,000 after settlement. But we were able to catch it before settlement, and the seller paid for it. So,
And that cost was $8,000?
it cost $8,000. It was a dual line and dual all kinds of boxes and stuff. It was about $8,000 repair.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a great one.
Okay. So that's paragraph 2. A and
Larry,
B.
I'm so sorry, but it's not so clear for me. If the seller didn't get the final inspection or whatever permit, why title company didn't find this issue on time and didn't
The settlement company would not find that. That is not an issue for the settlement company to find. That is not in the chain of record of title. Has nothing to do with title.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Larry, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I got to run. Some of these issues that we need further clarification on. Can I ask you in the future to, like that formula you just talked about, the break-even point? Can I ask you in the future to clarify, maybe at
Sure.
another meeting, or make an appointment to see you or something?
Yeah, no, just, on Mondays I do Ask Larry, and I know they didn't
Okay.
send anything out last week, but we did an Ask Larry, and I apologize for the 3 people that were with me. I cut it kind of short. So Monday I'm going to revisit all the stuff I talked about with Ask Larry about, seller having the right to void a contract, yes or no, power of attorneys. I'm gonna recover all that. So Monday at 11 o'clock, I'll do that one again if you guys can join me at 11 on Monday.
And we can ask you those questions then.
You can ask me any question you want on Mondays.
Okay. Well, I just want to let you know, Coach Epley said you're a gifted receiver, and I want you to know you're a great leader and a great communicator.
Well, I
Just
appreciate
like
that.
you were a
Thank you.
great receiver.
Thank you.
You have a great day.
Okay. Okay. So paragraph 2A and B, we got that one. Rather than go into these next couple paragraphs, I think that's enough for you for one day to think about. We'll pick up next week with the other 2 paragraph, 3 or 4 paragraphs of this form, and we'll go from there. Any other questions about what we discussed today?
Yes, Larry, can you review the break-even formula again?
Okay, so break even. If you know how much money they owe, okay, then you divide that number by this factor. You start with 100%, okay? You subtract from 100% your commission. So if it was 6%, that would be 0.94. Closing costs in Virginia run about 2.25 if they're not paying any other fees, right? So you would subtract that from the 94. So what does that leave us? 91.75. So you would divide the remaining mortgage balance by 0.9175, and that gives you the break-even point, how much they have to actually sell the house for to not bring money to the table. That doesn't mean what they paid for it and those other closing costs. That's just so that they don't have to bring money to the table.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you guys very much for joining me today. I don't want to start another paragraph here. I have to teach 4 hours starting at 1 o'clock, so I need to finish preparing for that. That's broker CE, and that's quite an extensive class. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Remember.
Hello, Laurie.
Oh yeah.
Sorry to disturb you.
No
I have
problem.
a question. can you please tell me what page we are on, what page we will be on Monday?
Paragraph 26.
And because I have printed pages, like 77 pages in front of me, I'm just looking to find out what page.
There's 77 pages in the package.
Yeah,
So it should be on page 26. It should say clauses at the top.
26. Okay, one moment. Oh, I got it. Page
Okay.
26 clauses, right?
Right. And we just did backup and A and B.
Okay. Thank
So
you so
that,
much.
okay.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Have a good
Larry.
day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for
Thank you,
joining me.
Mr. Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
You're
Have
welcome.
fun in the class, CE class.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
That's where I ask brokers what they want to talk about. So,
Thank you.
okay, I'll see you guys.